Sunday saw the heaviest bombing since the end of World War II, and Russia is fighting back desperately. What exactly is the current situation of the Russia-Ukraine war? What kind of outcome will we see moving forward? Also, in the Middle East, Iran is now offering a $30,000 bounty to capture U.S. soldiers. Meanwhile, the MOU has already expired. The 60-day period is up. How will the war in the Middle East end? Another thing is Xi Jinping's upcoming visit to the U.S. He's arriving on September 24th, but it turns out the U.S. side can't find anyone to receive him, so the CCP is worried sick right now. So, will there be uncertainties in Xi Jinping's U.S. visit? Welcome to Good Morning America, brought to you by Fangway. Hello to our YouTube audience and listeners of Sound of Hope, Silicon Valley FM 96.1. Okay, let's get straight to the point. Ukraine launched an unprecedented strike on the Russian capital, Moscow. That same night, Russia used what are called supersonic anti-ship missiles, along with various other ballistic missiles and 106 drones, to attack 13 locations in Ukraine, including Zelensky's hometown, causing multiple fires in the capital and killing 7 people. Some Ukrainians said the market was completely destroyed. A missile hit and the whole market, from one end to the other, not a single stall was left. Meanwhile, from Sunday night to early Monday morning, Ukraine launched a major strike on Moscow. The mayor of Moscow said Moscow and surrounding areas were hit by about 600 drones, the largest drone attack in the history of the Russian capital, Moscow, killing 1 person. Ukraine's targets weren't the city center, but were concentrated 45 kilometers outside the southern suburbs of Moscow. A key target here was Russia's largest e-commerce platform, the Wildberries logistics warehouse. The fire from the drone attack burned billions of dollars worth of goods. Since July, Ukraine has destroyed 7 of Wildberries' 10 largest logistics centers. What is Wildberries? It's the Russian version of Amazon, 7 of its 10 largest logistics centers. This is definitely not accidental. They are targeting them specifically. Why? Because these huge warehouses are transporting dual-use materials, including drone parts, navigation equipment, bulletproof vests, radios, and various other supplies. Russian volunteers and troops buy these things on the open market and then transport them to the front lines. Ukraine's long-range drones have now paralyzed a large part of Russia's Amazon. So the Ukrainian army isn't just blowing up tanks or military factories. They are also cutting off low-profile commercial logistics that continue to supply the Russian front lines without obvious military labels. In short, it's cutting off their food supply, or cutting off their supplies. That same night, Ukraine also hit a defense factory in Rostov, Russia, so defense and munitions factories are still being targeted. The Russian Ministry of Defense said they shot down 822 Ukrainian drones overnight, while over 1,400 drones attacked. The mayor of Moscow said that of the 600 drones flying toward the capital, 1/3 were destroyed over the Moscow region, which means 400 hit the ground. As you know, in the early days of the Pacific War, after Japan's sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States launched the famous Doolittle raid on April 18, 1942. At that time, Lieutenant Colonel Doolittle led 16 American long-range bombers, heading straight for the Japanese capital, Tokyo. Each bomber carried 4 bombs, so a total of 64 bombs were dropped. And Ukraine's bombing of Moscow involves 400 drones, which is like 400 bombs, far exceeding the scale of the Doolittle raid on Tokyo back then. At the same time, the Rostov region in southern Russia, which borders Ukraine, was also attacked by Ukrainian drones. The governor of that region said 150 incoming drones were destroyed and 5 people died on the ground. He didn't say how many hit the ground, but it's likely more than 150. Ukraine's goal in this round of strikes is very clear. Since they can't intercept the Russian bombing of Kyiv and other parts of Ukraine due to a severe shortage of Patriot missiles, they have to balance the losses by counterattacking to force Putin into a ceasefire or peace talks. Ukraine has indeed rapidly expanded its long-range and deep-strike missile and drone capabilities this year, allowing it to attack warehouses, refineries, ports, and military facilities as far as 2,400 kilometers from the border. And Ukrainian President Zelensky said that in the next 2 years, they could reach 5,000 or even 10,000 kilometers. So currently, Ukraine's long-range strike capability almost matches what Russia had at the beginning of the war. As for defense, both sides' air defense systems are nearly exhausted and strained, so there's only one move left. Both sides are attacking without defending, because they can't. It's just a matter of how much damage they can inflict. In the latest estimate, after 4 years of war, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense reported that Russian casualties in July were nearly 43,000, a monthly high in over a year. The total number of Russian casualties is now said to be approaching 1.5 million, while Ukraine has about 300 to 400,000 casualties. Now, Putin is finding it increasingly difficult to recruit. Some experts believe that if there's a manpower shortage, Putin might be forced to restart peace talks. Currently, Ukrainian sources say the Russian army has recruited 3,000 Africans from 37 countries to fight. Many have died, and Ukraine now holds 35 African prisoners of war. Additionally, about 30 to 50,000 North Korean soldiers are being prepared for deployment to fight for Russia, so it's clear that the Russian army is short on manpower. With such heavy casualties on both sides, current polls show 64% of Russians support peace talks, while 66% of Ukrainians believe their government should seek a negotiated end to the war. But negotiations at the official level still haven't made any real progress. Now, regarding Fang Wei's comments, I think the biggest obstacle to peace talks is Putin, because his greatest fear is his own political security after the talks, so he refuses to budge. This has turned into a real war of attrition between the two countries, destroying each other, you know? So after this battle, how Russia and Ukraine will recover is, well, hard to say. Of course, Ukraine will recover quickly, because with the United States and Europe behind it, it'll bounce back fast, and it's relatively small. But for Russia, recovery is really hard to say. It's just nowhere in sight. Iran pulled a strange move, saying that the Iranian army commander-in-chief, Khatami, told the official Iranian news agency that they're offering a $30,000 reward for killing or capturing any American soldier. If an Iranian woman does it, the reward will be doubled. Of course, this is quite sensational, but the problem is the United States military is striking from a distance, so Iran can't even see a shadow of them. How are they going to capture or kill anyone? Of course, why say this? It's just a war of words from afar. That's how it is right now. Besides the ground battles and the missile exchanges, there's also this verbal crossfire. Meanwhile, the MOU signed between the United States and Iran, that memorandum was originally for 60 days, and it's expiring now. It's about to expire. President Trump said Iran should wave the white flag and surrender now. But he said, I don't have a timetable, I'm not in a hurry. If you don't surrender, we'll just wait it out. Then he was asked by reporters about Oman talking with Iran to jointly control the strait. You know what Trump said? Trump said if Oman gets in our way during the conflict with Iran in the Strait of Hormuz, the United States will blow them to smithereens. Now, Oman is on the south side of the strait, right? It's always been a neutral country, a mediator. As for the dispute over the strait, Oman proposed what's called the Malacca Strait Model. What is the Malacca Strait Model? It involves the littoral states. There are 3 countries along the coast: Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. And the user states, the major users of the Malacca Strait, which are China, Japan, South Korea, the United States, and Australia. Everyone works together, and what needs to be built along the strait? Everyone contributes voluntarily. So he gave this suggestion to Iran, saying this would restore shipping without letting Iran have exclusive control, so everyone's okay. And who wasn't okay with it? Iran wasn't okay with it. Instead, Iran tried to bring Oman in, saying, let's block the strait together and split the transit fees. But this move is very dangerous, and Trump absolutely can't allow it. So yesterday and this morning, he issued a threat saying he'd, blow the crap out of Oman if they do that. But those were Trump's exact words. I'm not using foul language. All right, currently this weekend, at least 3 ships were hit by Iran while passing through the Strait of Hormuz. 2 of them were attacked while leaving the strait, and 1 while entering. The specific locations haven't been made public yet. As a result, weekend shipping through the Strait of Hormuz slowed down significantly. Only 5 large cargo ships passed through on Saturday, and by Sunday, not a single one. And last weekend, it was 31 ships. So at the same time, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is also in crisis. So since Yemen's Houthi rebels announced a naval blockade on Saudi Arabia on July 20th last weekend, 49 cargo ships passed through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, compared to 55 the week before that, so it's also under pressure. Furthermore, there's no record of Saudi oil shipments in the vessel tracking data, so it's possible that Saudi oil tankers are avoiding the Bab el-Mandeb Strait because it's just too dangerous. Now, oil prices are staying high, but even so, they haven't topped $90. Brent crude is currently at $88, so it's not ridiculously high yet. At the same time, before the midterm elections, Trump told the public that to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons, we need to endure high oil prices for a bit. So it looks like this situation won't change before the midterms. So I'll say it again, regarding the midterms, no matter the outcome, there are variables on both sides. For the Republicans, oil prices are a variable for them, while the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, is a variable for the Democrats. There's more related news below that's very important to share with you. Okay, next, let's look at a very important piece of news. Since the war began, multiple media outlets have reported that the U.S. military has already used up 1/3 of its Tomahawk missiles, 2/3 of its Patriot interceptors, and nearly half of its precision-guided missiles. But at the same time, President Trump insists that the U.S. has plenty of ammunition to continue fighting in Iran, and what's been used so far is just peanuts. What does he mean by peanuts? It means just a few grains of peanuts, like it's nothing at all. So what is the actual truth? Famous American think tank, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS, released a report saying it's not that the U.S. lacks ammo to fight Iran. The U.S. does indeed have enough to keep going there. However, CSIS stated that the real problem lies elsewhere. The problem is the Taiwan Strait. Because if U.S. stockpiles are depleted like this, the real issue is it would threaten a potential war with the CCP and the Taiwan Strait. A retired U.S. Marine Corps colonel, who's also a senior advisor for defense and security at this think tank, Mark Kansian, said that in this situation, the depletion of ammunition is indeed the main reason for pausing airstrikes. But the inventory levels are below what U.S. war planners require for future conflicts, which could tempt the CCP to seize an opportunity. In other words, the pause isn't because of the war in Iran, but due to concerns about a potential conflict with the CCP in the Taiwan Strait. Because if a war with the CCP broke out, current ammunition reserves would be insufficient. In the 2027 fiscal budget, the Department of Defense, or the War Department, requested $5.8 billion for Tomahawk missiles, a 513% increase over the previous year. And the budget request for precision-guided missiles is 245% higher than the previous year. For high-end air defense systems, like the TH-8 system, the budget is increased by 650%. And for this famous enhanced version of the Patriot missile, its budget is 927% higher. But the problem is, even if the funding is approved, it'll take years for the new munitions to reach the battlefield. So this request for nearly 10 times the number of Patriot missiles likely won't show up on the front lines for another 3.5 years. And the delivery time for Tomahawk missiles is about 4 years, while some munitions orders could take as long as 5 years. So now, meanwhile, Trump has already established framework agreements with contractors to strengthen the production capacity and speed of critical munitions. These agreements require building new facilities, setting ambitious timelines, and increasing weapon systems, enhancing weapon systems. Okay, next let's talk about some news related to mainland China. The United States Embassy in China is continuously warning United States citizens what is going on exactly. This affects many Chinese people, so I, Fang Young, still need to talk about it. So the United States Embassy in China continues to post serious warnings on X, warning United States citizens. This time, the reminder is even more detailed, including staying in hotels in China, in offices, in cars, in taxis, using the internet in China, or using digital payments, all could be subject to on-site or remote surveillance. While staying in a hotel, personal belongings might be searched without your consent. I think it is basically without you even knowing. So they can open the door and search your things at any time. You cannot hide any privacy at all. So this is not a one-time reminder. Rather, the United States side lately, the United States Embassy in China, has been repeatedly updating and escalating the risk advisories for traveling to China. So what exactly is the United States government warning Americans about? What are they guarding against? I'll share two of my thoughts on this. Clearly, the United States Embassy believes that under the current United States-China relations, there's no safety for Americans going to China. Americans visiting mainland China, especially Chinese Americans, need to be particularly vigilant. That is why all its warnings are in Chinese, you see, in large Chinese characters. Second, the United States Embassy surely knows what is happening in China. Now, do I know? I do not know, and the outside world does not know. But judging by the paranoia in the CCP's new entry and exit management regulations, China has a huge sense of insecurity and is overreacting. So in this situation, I really think overseas Chinese should not return to China lightly to avoid getting caught in the crosshairs. Let us look back at history. Chinese citizens being able to apply for passports for private matters to go abroad, this started on February 1st, 1986. From then until now, 2026, it can almost be said to have come full circle, exactly 40 years, symbolizing a kind of end to the reform and opening up. That year was still the era of Hu Yaobang and Zhao Ziyang. Back then, I had just started college. The CCP passed the first law specifically regulating citizens' entry and exit. A major breakthrough was allowing ordinary Chinese citizens to apply for passports for private reasons for the first time, instead of passports only being issued to those traveling for official business as in the past. So, since the freedom to go abroad from 40 years ago is now effectively banned, the freedom to return home might also be effectively banned. So why take the risk? As the saying goes, don't enter a state in danger or live in one in chaos. If you're planning to return to China, I suggest waiting to see how things develop. What we're seeing today isn't just tighter entry and exit rules. The entire control system is being strengthened, from movement to internet access. For those of us overseas, at least we can still freely access information and make our own judgments. But many compatriots in mainland China live behind a high wall of information, which is why we've been promoting the one-click firewall-jumping public welfare project, hoping to gather the strength of overseas Chinese to help more compatriots inside the wall break through the information blockade and see unfiltered information. In August, we already sent the latest usage data report on breaking through the firewall to every friend who donated, Everyone can clearly see how many people their support has actually helped. If you agree on the importance of this, I think this is very, very important. It's the most meaningful thing being done for China today. If you want to participate and support us, then I'd like to warmly invite you to continue supporting our fundraising project, What you're supporting isn't just a tool to jump the firewall, but you're helping more compatriots open a window to free information. The donation link is right below the program, down there, On behalf of all Chinese netizens, I want to thank everyone. Okay, now for this very bizarre news, Xi Jinping's visit to the US is imminent. He's set to visit on September 24th, but something very embarrassing for Beijing has happened, or rather, it's happened again. What is it? So far, no point of contact in Washington responsible for hosting this trip has been found, so observers are even starting to analyze whether the Trump-Xi meeting will be blown away and, fall through. Now, to understand why this is such a big deal, I need to explain, because a U.S. visit has always been the biggest event for a CCP leader, for the top leader. From Deng Xiaoping to Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, and so on, to Xi Jinping today, it's not just about diplomacy. More importantly, it's about domestic politics, or two layers of domestic political face. The first layer represents the leader's status within the party. Only a leader who can handle U.S.-China relations can be considered the absolute, supreme leader within the party. Second is to strengthen the deterrence, or rather the prestige among the domestic public. Hey, it's like saying, see, our party leader can handle America. The Americans respect me, us, and that's why you should behave and listen. So these two layers of face, these are concerns that typical foreign heads of state don't have when visiting the US, but the CCP does. So for the CCP, everything must be careful, rehearsed repeatedly, with no room for error. It must be flawless to save those two layers of face. But you can ensure that in China. You can prepare all you want, but the US is unreliable. So the South China Morning Post in Hong Kong cited sources saying that so far, no U.S. official or agency is responsible for organizing this visit, and there's only a little over a month left. The U.S. State Department, so far, has basically not been involved. Rubio. You think Rubio is very interested in being involved in this, to make this whole thing turn out so perfectly? There's a huge minefield here. Like when Trump and Xi Jinping met at the White House, Trump opened the door and said, "Hey, reporters, come on in, ask whatever you want." Don't scare Xi Jinping to death. Since this summit will be held in the United States, most of the protocol arrangements, venues, and public information releases are controlled by the White House. Of course, right? They're the hosts. So the CCP has very little control over the summit's image and any unexpected situations, which is why their anxiety is growing by the day. Regarding this article in the South China Morning Post, let me share my take. It's the CCP's way of reminding the U.S. through the South China Morning Post. They've used Bloomberg before, too. Basically saying, we're very uneasy. See? Even the papers are saying it. So come talk to us already. In reality, the U.S. government is very familiar with these state visits. With world leaders coming and going in Washington, D.C., there's no need for special advanced preparations. It's all long-established routine, so there's no chaos on the U.S. side. But if the Chinese side feels things are disorderly or chaotic, it's because the U.S. doesn't particularly value your visit and doesn't care about the CCP's feelings or concerns. That's how I see it. Don't you agree? A similar situation happened last time, too. As you know, Trump was originally scheduled to visit China in late March of this year. With only 3 weeks to go, the same thing happened. No one from the U.S. side went to the CCP to discuss the arrangements. Trump was going to China, yet the U.S. side didn't seem to care at all. Consequently, both sides couldn't fully communicate on the visit's goals and expected outcomes. Beijing was also dissatisfied at the time, and one of the results was that the visit was postponed until May. Then in May, President Trump did visit Beijing and received a high-profile reception from the CCP. He even went into Zhongnanhai and counted the rings on the trees one by one. But regardless, the two sides ultimately didn't achieve any substantive results. To be honest, that's how it was, wasn't it? So after the Trump-Xi meeting, the US and China continued to pressure each other. Last month, Washington added dozens more Chinese companies to the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act entity list and banned the import and sale of newly produced foreign robotic equipment and power inverters to the US. Beijing then retaliated by sanctioning 7 U.S. entities to tighten export controls on drones and related technologies. Great. One side won't let you in, the other won't let you out. Just wonderful. Also, in May, Xi Jinping personally made promises to Trump regarding Iran. But now it seems Beijing is still providing Iran with military equipment and logistics. This has made President Trump very unhappy. Even if he hasn't lashed out or said anything, he's definitely not pleased. So for this U.S. visit, the U.S. will surely demand that the CCP fully follows through on its word. But I doubt they will. They'll probably just talk the talk. So the current Trump-Xi summit is clouded by massive instability and uncertainty. It's even possible there could be a last-minute announcement that the visit is postponed. If it is postponed, it would definitely be until after the midterm elections. I think Trump would be more than happy to agree to that. Actually, his invitation for Xi Jinping to visit the U.S. was a last resort. You invited me, so out of courtesy, I'm inviting you back. And if I invite you, Xi Jinping will definitely want to come. To be able to come to the U.S. and perform on such a world stage is crucial for his public image on 2 levels. But Trump, or the U.S. side, actually has very little interest in this. They're only doing it because they have to. So if you want to postpone it, they'll immediately say, okay, fine, let's postpone it and talk later. That's definitely how it is. So will Xi Jinping's visit to the U.S. actually happen? We'll have to see. Right now, we don't know, but we know there's a problem. Okay, let's take a look at the situation inside the U.S. Pennsylvania's Democratic Senator John Fetterman expressed his distress on Sunday, saying that more than half of Democrats view socialism more favorably than capitalism, which is just insane. What's going on? CBS and the British polling firm YouGov conducted a joint poll in August. I see it was from the 12th to the 14th, which was about 10 days ago. Less than 10 days, about a week ago, surveying 2,287 American adults. So the sample size isn't small, but the conclusion's quite shocking. Regarding socialism, 58%, listen to this, 58% of Democrats have a positive view, while 18% have a negative view. Another 24% of Democrats express no opinion. 58 to 18, and this is the Democratic Party. In contrast, for capitalism, only 32% of Democrats have a positive view, while 50% have a negative view, and 18% express no opinion. So after Fetterman saw this, he posted a warning on X, saying the Democratic Party is turning into a socialist party. He said, "I'm a proud free market capitalist, and that the results of this poll are just crazy." So it's true that within the Democratic Party, the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, is on the rise. If the poll I just mentioned is accurate, and I have no reason to doubt its accuracy, if it is accurate, then the DSA is truly devouring the Democratic Party. And what is the reason for this rise of democratic socialism within the party? Listen closely, because your children will almost certainly ask you about this or bring it up. I'm going to say this next part. I said it last night, but important things should be said 3 times. I'll say it at least a second time, so please listen. Because one of the DSA leaders, or perhaps the top leader, Bernie Sanders, who is also the U.S. Senator from Vermont, always brings up Northern Europe when arguing for democratic socialism. He says Scandinavia has been very successful with it, so why can't we do it in America? So the situation in Northern Europe is Bernie Sanders' biggest excuse or defense for his brand of democratic socialism. But let me tell you, he's actually wrong. The Nordic countries have never practiced democratic socialism. What they practice is social democracy. So what's the difference between democratic socialism and social democracy? The difference is huge. Social democracy refers to a capitalist market economy combined with high taxes and high welfare. Democratic socialism, on the other hand, refers to transforming key economic industries into state-owned or public ownership through elections and gradual reforms, eventually transitioning to a socialist economy. These two are completely different things, but the terms used are very similar, just in a different order. So Bernie Sanders just lumps them all together. And in 2015, the Danish Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister Rasmussen, specifically clarified this in a speech during his visit to the US. He said, "We in Denmark have a market economy. We are not a democratic socialist country." He criticized Sanders without naming him. Sanders was actually sitting right there, as it was a speech to Congress. But interestingly enough, Sanders just keeps saying it anyway. He's still saying it to this day. So let me talk about Sweden in more detail, the largest of the Nordic countries. We should know that among the 3 Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, Sweden's population accounts for 50% of the 3, and its economic size accounts for 40%. It's definitely the big brother of the Nordics.